Today we're going to be taking a look at power off stalls.
And we'll have our first indication of our nose breaking. It broke on your side, so you must be pretty big. This is something that you never want to actually do out in the wild. This is something that's just for the training environment. This recovery is what you want to be engraved in your mind, so that if it happens without thinking, you know how to recover.
Hey guys, it's Matthew from Sling Pilot Academy. Welcome to our instructional maneuver series, where we explain a maneuver on the ground, show you what it looks like in the plane, and go over some common mistakes. Enjoy the video.
Hi, my name is NGT. Welcome to the Sling Pilot Academy maneuver series. Today we're going to be taking a look at power off stalls. Power off stall is a low energy stall with the aircraft configured for landing. This maneuver simulates a stall occurring during landing or the approach phase of flight. The goal of this maneuver is to introduce a pilot to the signals of an impending stall, whether these are buffets or an aircraft stall warning. Performing a full stall allows a pilot to understand how the aircraft will respond to the loss of uniform airflow over the wing. When performing a power off stall, we have multiple phases for the maneuver. The first phase is our setup or entry. Just like any maneuver, we're going to start in straight and level unaccelerated flight. The entry to this maneuver is similar to that of slow flight, where we'll slowly extend our flaps one notch at a time and retrim in between each step. With the aircraft fully configured, we're then going to intentionally stall the aircraft. It's very important to note that this is only something that should be done in a training environment. This maneuver is teaching a pilot how to recover from a stall, which should only occur unintentionally in normal flight. As I'll explain in the aircraft, when we stall the aircraft, we're going to pitch our nose up to about 10 to 12 degrees. As we do that, we may start to notice some left turning tendencies, which may cause the aircraft to yaw. It's very important that as you pitch up and begin the action of stalling the aircraft, you maintain rudder coordination as best as possible. If you fail to keep the aircraft coordinated during the stall, you may notice a wing drop to the left or to the right. In a couple minutes, we'll take you out to the airplane and show you how to fully perform this maneuver. But before then, let's talk about the recovery from the maneuver. As you know, to stall an aircraft, you need to raise the nose above the critical angle of attack. What's very important for the pilot to understand with this maneuver is how to recover and get the aircraft safely out of this undesired aircraft state. When the aircraft stalls, it's vital the pilot makes prompt and positive aircraft control inputs to reduce the angle of attack, increase airspeed, and regain altitude to get away from the ground. During your training, you will learn to recover from a stall from 2 points. The first one being at the first indication of an impending stall. That can be an aircraft buffet or the stall warning going off. You will also learn how to recover the aircraft from a fully developed stall. It's very important that you learn both and understand the differences between the two. In the real world, whether you get a buffet or the aircraft fully stalls, it's very important that you make quick corrective actions to recover from the stall. During a stall recovery, it's important to remember that it's safer to slow down and confirm you're making the correct control inputs rather than rushing and possibly making negative control inputs that can make the stall worse. Finally, like all maneuvers, it's important that the aircraft is cleaned up and returned back to straight and level unaccelerated flight. Now we'll head over to the aircraft and show you how to do the full maneuver.
Alright, so here we are back out in the practice area in our lovely Sling 2, and now we're going to start with stalls. So we'll take a look at the power off stall like we just talked about in the ground, and to start that we're going to be here back in level flight, and the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that I'm happy with the altitude I'm at. Because with this maneuver we're going to be losing a good chunk of altitude, and if we do end up in an incipient spin, we do want to have plenty of altitude to recover just in case. Now right now we're at 3,500, which I'm pretty comfortable with that altitude if you're comfortable with that. Yep. Cool. Alright, so we'll go ahead and start this maneuver. So just like we did with slow flight, we're going to slowly configure our aircraft to be in a flaps full, low airspeed state. So just like we did, we're going to start with our heading, our altitude, and our airspeed, and we're going to start by slowing down. Which in this case, I'm going to bring our power back just a little bit, maybe use a little bit of nose up trim to try to maintain 3,500. As my airspeed starts to fall below our VFE, our flap airspeed, I'm going to introduce flaps 1. Right after I do flaps 1, I immediately go to nose up trim, just to relieve the stress and not have to worry about holding that back pressure myself. I'll continue bringing my power back, and as I do that, I'm going to go flaps 2, and immediately start to use a little bit of nose up trim. The key is to make flying as easy on yourself as possible, and using trim really helps that. So we're going to continue to try to maintain our altitude, and try to maintain our heading, and we'll do flaps 3 now. So as you can see, we're back to basically slow flight, where we're maintaining our altitude, we're maintaining our heading, and our airspeed is between 65 and 55 knots. So now that we're basically straight and level, configured with our flaps full, we're going to go ahead and start the maneuver. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to simulate that we're going in to descend to the runway. So to do that, I'm going to bring the power slowly back to idle, and I'm going to let the nose just pitch itself down. We'll do a very shallow descent, maybe 5 degrees on the pitch, and as we descend, say 100 feet to 3,400, what I'm going to do is slowly pitch the nose up to about 10 to 12 degrees on the pitch attitude to simulate that we're flaring. I'm going to hold it, and what will happen is we'll start to hear our beeps for angle of attack indicator, and we'll have our first indication of our nose braking. What we'll do is we'll slowly bring our power back to full. We're going to start climbing away from the ground. I'm going to wait till I get a positive rate of climb, and I'll go flaps 2. I'll use a little bit of nose down trim. I'll go flaps 1. Use a little nose down trim. And then I can bring the flaps up. And I'm just going to continue climbing back up to 3,500. I'm going to be maintaining my heading, and I'm going to be scanning for traffic now that we've recovered from the stall. And as all that happens, our airspeed will continue to build, and we'll get back into straight and level flight. But now really, a lot just happened right there that I didn't explain. And the really big one is one of our wings dropped. And like I talked about in slow flight, that is something that can happen if you're just slightly uncoordinated as your plane fully stalls in the sling. Now, during training, you want to learn to recover the stall from 2 points. The first one being the first indication of the stall. Some examiners may want you to recover right when you get a first indication, whether that's a strong buffet, or if it's your AOA indicator doing that constant buzz. Other examiners, and what we feel is very important for you to also learn, is how to do a recovery from a full stall, which is what you saw me do right there. We need to know how to recover the plane from a full brake stall. Like I said, what normally will happen in the sling is one of your wings will break. And the fun part about most aircraft, the wing that breaks will change all the time. It can depend on how heavy the person is that you're flying with. It broke on your side, so you must be pretty big. Yeah, sorry. But the really big factor is the coordination. If I'm not doing enough rudder, or if I'm doing too much rudder, that could decide which wing breaks. What's very important when you do these stalls is you don't assume which wing will break. Now what we need to do when one of those wings breaks is identify which wing is down and which wing is up. The recovery for this doesn't have to be instant. Sometimes if you don't process which way the aircraft is banking, you'll do the incorrect rudder, which can make the situation even worse and put you into an incipient spin. So it's very important that you first register what's happening and then make the correct reaction. So we'll go ahead and do one more, and we'll talk through as we do it. Alright, so now that we're back and we're configured for the stall, we'll do the same thing as we did before. We'll bring our power back to idle, we'll let the plane start to pitch down, and we'll arrest that descent at about -5 degrees nose down. After we descend 100 feet, we'll slowly pitch our nose up to about 10 to 12 degrees, and we'll just hold it. As we start to pitch up, we're going to hear the stall warning, and the aircraft's going to stall. The first thing I'm going to do is identify which wing is the high wing. In this case, it was my left wing that was high. So what I'm going to do to recover from that is do left rudder. So I'm going to step on the high wing. What you're doing when you step on the high wing is you're increasing the speed of the lower wing, the more stalled wing, and you're trying to unstall it and get your wings back to a level state so that you can begin a coordinated recovery for the full stall. Now with the rudder, when you go to recover from one of those wing drops, it's very important that you don't add too much rudder pressure. Now let's say my left wing dropped and my right wing went up. If I was to add full right rudder, that would be way too much. And what could happen is it could speed up my left wing so much and slow down my right, that the same thing just happens, but now our right wing drops and our left wing is the high wing. And that can lead to a secondary stall, which could also lead into an incipient spin. So it's very important that when you add that rudder pressure, you start with a light amount, and if you need more, you add more. You can always add more, but you can't really take too much out. Alright, so we'll go ahead and do one more, and we'll use a little bit of the sling's aerodynamic and positive stability to help us out here. So we'll bring our power back, we'll start our descent at about -5 degrees. Once we descend 100 feet, we'll bring our nose up to about 10 to 12 degrees. Now, like I said, it's very important that we do the correct recovery rather than just an instant recovery. What I'm going to do here is stall but not use rudder on the recovery. And as you can see, because the Sling 2 is such a stable aircraft, it immediately just recovers itself without me doing any rudder input. Now what's important though is as the pilot, you need to make sure that you still do the rudder input to ensure that the aircraft recovers. But what I want to demonstrate right there is that it would be better that you not do any input than do the wrong input. That's why we stress very much that you need to take the time to see what is my aircraft doing and how do I recover before you make any kind of input. So we're going to climb back up and we're going to go ahead and do one more stall, but this time we're going to focus on the recovery. So we talked about the entry to the stall, which is very simple. Like I said, power back, -5 degrees, lose 100 feet, and then pitch up 10 to 12 degrees and just hold it, and the stall will come. But now let's focus on the details of the stall recovery. So let's go ahead and do one more stall right now, but let's really look at the recovery after we do the rudder input. So here we are, we're a little high, but that's fine. We'll go ahead and bring our power back, and we'll start our descent down to about -5 degrees on the pitch. There's 100 feet for the descent. We'll go ahead and pitch up to our 10-12 degrees, and we're just going to hold it. Now again, I'm going to identify which wing has stalled here, and we'll see that this time, oh, we didn't even really have a wing break. Look at that, that's a nice one. What we're going to slowly do now that we've stalled is increase our power. We're going to slowly but constantly bring power full and start to pitch up away from the ground. As we start to pitch up away from the ground, we can see we're getting a constant rate of climb. We're going to let our airspeed start to build a little bit. We want some positive rate on the airspeed as well. We can go flaps 2. Use a little bit of trim to help stabilize our climb. Once our airspeed continues to rise, we can go flaps 1. We're getting towards 3,500, which is perfect. There's 75 knots. I'm going to go flaps up. I'm going to use my trim to lower my nose at 3,500. I'm going to bring my power back so that I can return to straight and level flight at my starting altitude and starting airspeed of 91 knots. This isn't a maneuver where you need to be making instant changes. You just need to be making quick, positive control changes that get the aircraft back to where you want it to be. The last little bit to wrap this up is let's talk about some of the errors that pilots make when they're first learning this. Now, obviously the big one is pilots are sometimes scared of learning stalls for the first time, which is completely understandable because this is something that you never want to actually do out in the wild. This is something that's just for the training environment. But the reason that we're practicing this is, in the case it happens to you, you know how to recover. It doesn't catch you off guard. This recovery is what you want to be engraved in your mind, so that if it happens without thinking, you know how to recover. Some of the common errors that pilots will make when they're first learning these will be either failure to put any rudder input in, or they put the wrong rudder in. Now again, like I said, it's very important that you realize you would be much better off not putting rudder in at all than doing the wrong one. So that's why it's very important that you take the time to assess what the aircraft is doing and which wing is your high wing. There's no need to rush the recovery, because if you rush, you mess up. Now, the most common error that you will see with this maneuver is this habit that you need to break right off the bat. And that is when one of those wing breaks, what a lot of pilots will do is they add aileron instead of rudder. Which, yeah, it makes sense. Your natural reaction when one of your wings is banking is to use aileron to recover it. But what you need to realize is that using ailerons when one of your wings is stalled like that, it can just worsen the stall and put you into an incipient spin. So it's very important that when you first start these maneuvers, you're thinking about the aileron, and you're not using any of it to recover. Once you get the wings back to level with the rudder recovery, then your ailerons are working again. Your wings are unstalled and the ailerons are usable. But initially, when one of your wings breaks, if you start using aileron, it can cause you to bank more and worsen the stall. Another important key with this maneuver is that you practice it to a full stall like we showed. Now, at first, yes, it's not the most comfortable thing doing those full breaks, but it's very important that you know how it feels so that if it does happen out in the wild, you know how to recover. It's very important that when you're training, you force yourself out of your comfort zone and learn how to recover from a full break. You're going to have an instructor sitting next to you that knows how to recover from the spin, and I will tell you firsthand, it's very hard to spin the Sling. It is a very happy flying aircraft, and it's really hard to disrupt it and get it to spin. So it's really key that when you're doing this, you practice both recoveries from a full stall and from the first indication.
If you have any questions, reference the Sling Pilot Academy Sling 2 Maneuvers Guide, or ask any CFI or a chief instructor. Thanks for watching.
Oh, you little sh**. Now what the most... There's Dutch rolls now. You could just slide the maneuver by doing flaps and holding the back pressure yourself, but the trim allows... No, I'm not even going to talk about that. Forget that.